Animals bring comfort more than anything else, comfort and heartbreak. Humans could learn compassion from being with animals because that is what animals need, but that's also what they teach. I grew up in Jackson, New Jersey. That is in Ocean County.
How would you describe what your childhood was like growing up out here?
I would say that my childhood growing up here was sunny. I was always outside. I was always excited to see what animals were in the woods. The smell of dirt, that's what I remember a lot, is the sunniness, the dirt, the woods. I would say my childhood was pretty fun growing up in Jackson.
Where you lived, there was a lot of trees and forest.
Yes, growing up I lived on 5 acres and a majority of that was woods. So I was always in the woods trying to find animals, take pictures of animals, just find a critter to get my little self excited over.
Did you have any siblings?
I do. I have a younger brother. He is 5 years younger than me.
Was he also interested?
No, my younger sibling was not always interested in the bugs and the dirt and the trees and the animals like I was. We are nature versus nurture. I was always nature and my younger brother was nurture. So as much as we really love each other, we grew up having different interests and perspectives.
Did you have both parents growing up?
Yeah, I lived in a 4-person household, me, my little brother, my mom, and my dad.
What was your relationship like with either of your parents?
Both of my parents did the best that they could. They did the best that they knew how, being first-time parents. You know, I was the oldest. I would say my mom was nurture and my dad was nature, so I kind of grew up knowing hardcore nature as the way that you love people and you have to be stone on the outside and soft on the inside. And from my mom, I just always knew softness and nurture. So from both of them, I got 2 different perspectives and ways of talking and living.
What kind of person were you in high school?
In high school, I was completely different than I am now. I really loved the color pink, and I loved purses and shopping, and every week was a new purse, and every week was a new set of outfits. I always loved animals when I was in high school, but not how I love them now. When I was younger, I loved animals because they entertained me, whereas now I love animals because I want to help them.
What's your earliest memory of feeling a deep connection with an animal?
When I was a very, very small kid, maybe 4 or 5 years old, a Canada goose came running into our yard being chased by a cat, and this goose was injured, couldn't fly, so we decided to take this goose into rehabilitation. And here I am as this 3, 4, 5-year-old kid, and my very first love is this goose named Spanky. And this goose never learned how to fly because of their injury, and as a kid I didn't realize that. So I would run up and down the yard and Spanky would follow me, and I would flap my arms as if they were wings, and Spanky would too, but neither of us ever got off the ground, and that was my first deep connection.
Did you have any pets in the house?
Growing up, I had a beagle named Binky, a Pomeranian named Arnold, and now our family rescue animal is a cockatiel named Bird, because unfortunately that was the only thing she ever responded to, but we will call her Miss B for short.
Was there a time when your dad brought home a chinchilla?
There was, yes. When I was in high school, I was a freshman, I believe. I was having a lot of heart problems while I was in school, and I was taken to the hospital mid-school day through an ambulance, and it was just a big scary thing. And after I was discharged from the hospital, we found out I have something called SVT, supraventricular tachycardia. I think I said that right. It's a mouthful. And in a way, to make me feel better, my dad was like, "What can I do for you? What can I help you with?" And I was like, this is my time. This is my time to shine. Let's get an animal. So I didn't know any better in high school, so I had him take me to PetSmart and buy a chinchilla. I didn't know any better, but now that I'm an adult, I would never do that. I would rescue one, but that is how that started.
What led you later on to be more of a protector of animals? Kind of how did your path change from just having animals that you liked for enjoyment versus caring for them?
When I was in my teenage years in high school, I mentioned that I loved animals because I saw them as cute and funny and entertainment. And as I got older, I still loved them, but I kind of just felt funky, going to pet stores, talking about breeding. And I was 17, turning 18 at the time, and I'm emailing all these places asking if they'll hire me. And the places I'm emailing are animal places like pet stores, zoos, shelters. And again, I was topsy-turvy. I didn't know what I was doing, what I wanted, but I knew it was about animals. And sadly, every single place turned me down. And on my 18th birthday, I emailed Popcorn Park Animal Refuge, one of the places that was on my email list. And I was like, hey, I just turned 18. You guys wouldn't hire me because I wasn't 18, but today's my birthday. Can I work for you for free if you don't want to pay me? So they're like, you know what? Let's take you in as an unpaid intern and we can just get you in the door. And then when I started working at this exotic animal refuge, working with rescued lions and tigers and donkeys and bears and monkeys, it hit me. I was like, oh my gosh, all of these exotic animals needed help. Why would anyone ever breed or go to a zoo that captures animals from the wild? I really have to start reconsidering the way that I look at animals and the way I love them. And that is what pushed me a little bit further into rescue.
So in addition to learning about how beneficial rescuing was, what did you learn from working at Popcorn Park that you didn't initially anticipate?
When I was working at Popcorn Park, I worked with a slew of different animals, a variety of species that I can't even count on my fingers. And when I was there, I was like, okay, wow, this is great. There are places for tigers to go. There's places for monkeys to go. This is so awesome. But when people would walk in with a guinea pig or a rabbit or a chinchilla or a snake, sometimes the refuge would have to turn them away because they just didn't have the facilities for small animals. They had them for large animals, but not necessarily for the smaller ones. So while I was still employed there, I was like, okay, well, maybe someone should start something for the smaller animals. And while I was still working there, I decided that I wanted to start rescuing them because there was really little facilities for them to be taken to when need be. So I started rescuing not as a nonprofit, but just as a sole proprietor. And that's how I started with the small guys.
Nice. Were there any connections that you had made with animals from working there?
When I was at Popcorn Park, there was a lion named Simba. And he came in from somewhere that had many big cats, and whatever had happened with the caretaker, the cats started to starve and they didn't have the help that they needed. So eventually he was taken to Popcorn Park and I was one of his caretakers. I was one of the big cat caretakers and I fell in love with him. He also had a heart problem. So immediately I was like, oh my gosh, we get along so well. We're twins, we know each other. But he also took to certain people very well. If I would run around the park, like if I ran past his cage, he would run with me. If I ran back and forth, he would run back and forth. If I came by in the cart, he would follow the cart. And sometimes if I were to stick around long enough, he would start to vocalize. And he did pass away about a year or two after I had left the park. And I will always remember him. I will always think about him. He will always be very special to me. He was one of my closest friends animal-wise, but the fact that he was a big cat, I think I'm very lucky to say that he was my friend.
At what point did you branch off to start your own organization?
While I was still working at the sanctuary park, I had gotten a message from a cousin of mine that was like, hey, there is this girl whose family left her this gigantic snake and she's too afraid to take care of this snake. If you don't take the snake or if somebody doesn't take this snake, they are going to euthanize her in a very inhumane way. And at this point, I was already rescuing. I wasn't a nonprofit. I wasn't anything special. But I was like, sure, I'll take her in. Her name was Persephone. She was about 6 feet long. She was a boa constrictor. And I went to the house. I took her in. I fell in love with her. I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe anyone would ever considering euthanizing a perfectly healthy animal, but doing so in such an inhumane way just because they were afraid. And that kind of lit something in me. I was like, okay, we have to start doing something more solid. I have to start putting the word out there that I am helping animals, and I'm gonna start a sole proprietorship. So while I was still working there, I started a sole proprietorship called Wild Exotics Animal Rescue, and the donations were not tax deductible. They could not be considered donations. I had to pay tax on them, but I was doing everything I could to help animals in my power while juggling working full-time and going to school full-time. And that was how I started Wild Exotics.
Did you feel that there was a need for you to have your own organization rather than bringing it to an existing organization? Kind of what led you in that path?
So just starting out, I actually didn't know that there were other small rescues that worked with exotics to begin with. I am very headstrong, and I was like, oh, nope, just got to start one. Nobody's out there. And it wasn't until I started rescuing and networking that I realized, there were other small animal rescues, but they are always at max capacity. So now me throwing myself in the mix as another rescuer, another rescue, that alleviates some of the high intake of some of the other rescues, not by much, but every little bit helps.
What were some of the obstacles you ran into starting your own organization and bringing in more and more animals?
So originally, Wild Exotics being a sole proprietorship, people were very hesitant to donate, which I understand. I totally get it, because you're more inclined to donate to a nonprofit than you are anything else. So after I graduated university, I had decided, okay, now I have more time on my hands. Let me become a nonprofit. So I dissolved the sole proprietorship, and I started to create a nonprofit now with the new name and our current name, Wild Exotics Animal Refuge. So I just changed one word, but it sounded cooler. So I went with it. I would say some of the obstacles were, one, finding an accountant. And after finding an accountant, you have to start getting lawyers involved to help incorporate, and it's really, really hard to find an accountant that will help you do that. So it was just a lot of back-end paperwork, documentation, legal type stuff. Those were hurdles. And then after becoming a nonprofit, our then biggest hurdle was continuous funding. Until this day, we've been a nonprofit probably about 2 years. Continuous funding is the biggest hurdle, but that goes for every nonprofit. But being that we are a smaller organization and lesser known, we have to fight a little bit harder to get our foot in the door and to make relationships and have people realize that we are also doing good, just on a different scale.
At what point did you have the most animals? How many did you have, and was it a challenge giving all of them the care they needed?
So at the point where we had the most animals, it was probably around 95. And that sounds crazy until I tell you what species they were. We had 85 betta fish at one time. So now that sounds a little bit less crazy, but still crazy in a different way. And then on top of the betta fish, we had all the other species that we regularly have, so that adds another 10. Not counting the betta fish, usually in my care on a regular rescue intake adoption basis, I would say it's about anywhere from 18 to 25. Because although we have a board of directors and I have a partner that helps me out tremendously, on the day-to-day it's me. It's me doing the feeding, the cleaning, the social media, the rescuing, the adoptions. And I know that on my own, sick or healthy, I can probably handle around 18 to 25 animals. And that's my cap, aside from the 85 betta fish rescue.
What's it like learning about each animal and their specific needs to care, the environments they like, the food that they like? It's a constant ongoing process for you?
Definitely. I would say I was honestly really lucky to get my start at Popcorn Park because they taught me a lot as I went. But again, I learned about larger exotic species. So for the smaller guys, I learn as much as I can, just, scrolling online, reading books. I try to read a lot of veterinary medicine books and reference books. And I tell this to everyone. We learn as we go. And some people might not like that. They might say you should be totally prepared. And my answer is I am prepared as I can be. But when you're dealing with so many different species, nobody knows every single thing. So we learn as we go. And I have found that's the most helpful. When we know that somebody wants to surrender a certain species, we will spend the whole night before doing research on it. If we already know about them, fantastic, great, let's just brush up. But if we don't know a lot, which we might not because we deal with so many different species, we learn as we go.
Has there been an animal rescued that had a transformation that had moved you?
I would say a handful of years ago, maybe 3 years ago, we had a very wonderful young woman reach out to us at a event that we were at. We were at a vegan festival fundraising, and this girl came up and she was like, hey, I have this African eating snake and I'm having a very hard time caring for her. She won't eat on her own. I have to tube feed her. Can you please take her? I love her so much to the point that I think someone else needs to help her. And I was like, yeah, of course I can. No problem. I see the struggle that you're in, and I see that you are a kind person looking for help. Let's do this. And a couple days later, she drove from Pennsylvania to New Jersey to drop this animal off with us. And African eating snakes are very difficult to breed in captivity. So typically they are wild caught. Now this snake was taken out of her wonderful home in Africa and brought to the States. Now, she wasn't purchased in New Jersey. I believe she was purchased at a exotic reptile expo in Georgia and then brought to Jersey. So this poor snaky girl has been all over the world, quite literally, to the point where any of her wild instincts were just ripped from her. So she wouldn't eat on her own, she wouldn't do anything on her own, and she was being tube fed for the duration of her life. Now, because she is an egg-eating snake, thankfully, we tube fed her eggs and no animals of meat substance. And we would have to force feed her through a tube that would go all the way down her body. And it was so uncomfortable for her. She hated it. It was awful. So we were like, okay, she has been uncomfortable and hating her life for the last 3 years, 3 years. Let's see what we can do. So I played with a multitude of different enclosures and temperatures and substrates and lighting and all different types of heat to see what I can do to simulate Africa. Now, trying to simulate Africa in Jersey is a little difficult, but we got it done because I would put quail eggs in her enclosure every so often in hopes that she would eat. And I was at my wit's end. And I was like, guys, I don't know what to do. I don't want to keep tube feeding her. And a local rescue reached out and was like, hey, you said she eats eggs. She has to climb up into trees and find nests, and that's how she finds the eggs. We have a really old retired bird's nest at our rescue. Do you want it? And I was like, sure, it's worth a try. I'll do it. So we bring this bird's nest home. She immediately smells the birds. And this nest was long unused, but she could still smell it. And we put one egg in there and then took another egg and cracked the yolk over it. So now she smells the yolkiness, she smells the birds, and that was it. Everything combined with the bird's nest and the food, that was it. And she finally ate. And it was world-changing for her. And it was world-changing for me because I realized that even the smallest gestures make such a difference. Now, saving one animal won't change the world, but it will change the world for that animal. And unfortunately, about 1.5 years later, she did pass away of old age. Nothing else, just old age. And that changed my life and hers and brings me a lot of comfort.
That's a beautiful story.
Thank you.
How would you describe Wild Exotics' core mission?
So Wild Exotics does a little bit of everything. Our mission is always to be a voice for the voiceless and to kind of shut down the places and the people that treat exotic animals like commodities. But we do a little bit of everything. We do adoptions. We are also a sanctuary, and we encourage people, instead of running to a store to buy an animal, just check a couple rescues first. Check our rescue first, because people love the unconventional animals, and that's what they want to bring into their home. And that's what we have. that's who we help. We help the more unconventional species, and it's my goal to bring that to people and to bring people to us. We also focus a lot on education. We work with the entire scale of ages, everyone from toddlers to very, very old. And it's because I think no matter who you are touching, their hearts, their minds, regardless of age, everybody can make a difference. Those elderly grandparents that we visit in age homes, they might take that back to their grandkids or their nieces and nephews. And the little teeny tiny kids that we're talking to from schools and camps, they're going to take that to their friends, to their parents, to their cousins, to everyone. And we like to teach people, and we like to touch their minds and their hearts, because if people feel the passion, if people feel the concern, then they start to understand. If people feel involved and validated when they ask questions or they want to touch a snake skin or anything that we bring with us, they start to become more interested.
What is something that the general public misunderstands about exotic pet trade?
That was a wonderful question. I love when people ask that question. People tend to look at exotic animals more as commodities, because a dog and a cat will easily come up and cuddle with you, show you when they're mad or sad or happy or excited, whereas some exotic animals can't. So people seem to automatically assume that they are a lesser than, and they feel less than, and they view them more as objects instead of living beings. And I can see why people would think that, because if an animal doesn't show emotion, you're going to think they don't have the capacity to feel. But with certain species of exotics, they hide everything. And tortoises, for example, they can't always tell you when they're happy or sad. They're not like dogs, they're not like humans. So I think that is the biggest misconception, is people looking at them as objects and commodities and thinking that they don't feel. That makes them treat them and view them differently than any domesticated animal.
Would you say there's a difference in personalities in exotic pets than particularly dogs and cats?
I would say so. Dogs and cats, immediately you can distinguish their personalities. You can tell who is who and what they like, what they don't like. Exotics are a little bit more hesitant to come out of their shells. Regardless if the animal is a chinchilla or a parrot or a tortoise, they need to feel safe first before anything, and it takes them a little while longer to decompress, I've noticed, than domesticated animals, because they tend to go through more trauma and misunderstanding, so they get very confused and don't know how to display.
You talked earlier about how you know better now than to go to a store to get a pet. Why is it important to rescue instead of going to a store?
First and foremost, I would say that exotic breeding mills are horrific. Horrific, horrific. If you have ever looked up undercover footage, and if you haven't looked it up, I urge you to, undercover footage of breeding mills, you will see animals covered in their feces, missing limbs, covered in blood, starving. That's very, very graphic, but that is the reality of it. And when you go to pet stores, they are frequently receiving their animals from mills. And if we can stop the suffrage of those mill animals through the word of rescue, I think that is the most important in starting to make a difference in the way that the world works and views exotics.
How do you envision wild exotics evolving in the next 5 to 10 years?
I'm really excited to think about that. When people ask me, like, oh, where do you want the rescue to go? I light up, because this is my whole world, absolutely my whole world. In the next 5 to 10 years, I would really love wild exotics to have stronger footing and to flourish. This is my whole dream. Wild exotics is my dream, my ride till I die. I want nothing else than for animals to be safe. And I would really love to acquire somehow a safe, large plot of land where I can start building facilities and enclosures and bringing any and all species in that I know I can appropriately afford and handle, to give them sanctuary and to adopt them out. Now, that is a very big dream, and I am a dreamer, and sometimes my dreams aren't realistic, But that is where I would like things to go in 5 to 10 years, in addition to doing education and perhaps trying to change some more laws. Wild Exotics is very community driven, so we work with people and the animals. So within that time frame, I would love to see safety for everyone.
Being around animals, specifically exotics, what do you think, just from a standpoint of personality, behavior, compassion, things like that, you wish that humans would take a lesson from animals?
Animals bring comfort more than anything else, comfort and heartbreak, whereas humans tend to bring much more than that, and I hate to say on a negative scale, but it is. I think humans could learn compassion from being with animals. That's why you will see some programs where people will bring cats to individuals in prisons and jails to keep them company and love and teach them compassion. And I think that is the number one thing. I say compassion all the time. That is something we frequently talk about because that is what animals need, but that's also what they teach.
Very educational, informative. Appreciate that. So thank you. Are we ready to meet our special guest?
Oh, I'm so ready, and I think you're ready, and he's probably ready.
Who do we have here?
So this is one of my best friends in the whole world. His name is Chains, after the band Alice in Chains, because he came in with another little lady named Alice. So together they are Alice in Chains. He is such a little punk, man. All that he wants to do is be destructive and run after people, but in a friendly, curious way. He is an animal that I will have to put in my will because sulcata tortoises can live anywhere from 75 to 100 years, and comparably, they can also weigh 75 to 100 pounds. And I'm very happy that he is a friendly little guy because he has been an amazing soul to aid us in our mission of education. And everyone loves him. When I say that you have to touch people, touch their hearts and their minds to get them to change their perspectives, he is the one that touches them. It's not me, it's him. He's the one that brings a different, compassionate perspective to the people that we meet.
What kind of tortoise did you say?
A sulcata tortoise, but they are also known as African spur-thighed tortoises because they come from the plains of Africa and they have spurs on their legs, but we can call him a sulcata tortoise for short.
What are any interesting facts to know about sulcata tortoises?
So a tortoise can feel when you touch their shell. So if I'm scratching his shell just like this, he can feel it. Their shells are made of a mixture of bone, like the bones in your arm, and keratin, like your fingernails. So that is what I'm touching. That is a mix of bone and keratin, and he can feel all of it.
Like a massage for him?
Yes, yeah, like a massage. And tortoises cannot swim, but they do love to sit in water to cool off, to hydrate. So even though he's not a swimmer, we frequently find him in his pool, and I think that's something you can say for most sulcatas, is they love to soak up the water.
How did you end up rescuing him?
I was in the parking lot of a Tractor Supply, and I just so happened to have my rescue stuff with me, and this man approaches me, and he's like, "Hey, I have 2 sulcata tortoises, and I just don't want them anymore. I think they're too much for me. I can't caretake for them. Will you take them?" And I love turtles and tortoises. So I was like, I would like to say yes, but let me do some work first because they are a very destructive and long-lived species. And after some contemplation and help from my friends and other rescues, I decided to take them both in for sanctuary. And sadly, about a year or 2 later, the individual who surrendered them to me because they were too much and he just didn't want them had decided to start over and shipped in 2 brand new baby hatchling sulcata tortoises from somewhere in the United States. He got them shipped in through the mail. So I'm expecting in another 4 to 5 years to get a call from this man who just did the exact thing that we fight against and educate against, asking me to take in his next 2 babies.
What is your dream for Chains?
My dream for Chains is for him to be forever healthy and happy. He's one of my best friends. I'm very close with a couple of our rescues, a couple of our sanctuary animals, but he is one of the animals that just means so much to me, and he's just so special. So I hope that as I grow older and he grows older, we will keep recognizing each other as two very important figures, and he will keep bringing compassion and education into the lives of everyone, because he's the one animal that people just are really drawn to, and he is doing a fantastic job of being a rescue, a sanctuary resident, an ambassador. He's just great.
I wouldn't say a lot, but people do have tortoises and turtles as pets. Would you recommend that? Do you think that's a good idea, being that you know how they thrive?
I don't think that is a good idea to have turtles and tortoises as pets. One of the most frequently surrendered turtles in rescue is red ear sliders, or any water turtles, but usually red ear sliders, because they live a very long time. Water care is very specific, and they can get different types of shell infections very easily. So I would say no way, Jose. Not to be the fun police, but turtles and tortoises are very difficult to take care of. There's a various amount of species, and they all need different care. And it seems like no matter what species it is that someone is surrendering, they just can't handle the reptile. And in New Jersey, it is illegal to buy or sell these animals. Turtles and tortoises as a whole. It's illegal to buy and sell them here, and that's why people go out of state to get them.
What do you think Chains would say now if he could talk?
Well, Chains is very vocal. He does a lot of moaning and groaning, so I think he would say, "Brittany, please put me down. I desperately want to eat lettuce," because he'll probably start moaning and groaning soon, because I can tell he wants to eat the lettuce that we have in the car and the greens and the grass all over the ground. I think he would say, "I love you, like, thanks for the help, but I really want to go eat more grass," honestly.
Very cool. Well, I appreciate you. I appreciate Chains. Is there anything else you'd like to share?
That kindness goes a long way. Whether it is to a human or an animal, kindness, even the smallest bit, is life-changing. And I think more people should show that to our fellow human race, but also animals. And when someone passes you, say hi, give them a high five, give them a hug maybe. I just think that kindness is the most important thing, and compassion for everyone.
Thank you so much.